ever feel like there's more to you than, than meets the eye, like beyond just your thoughts, your feelings, even your physical self?
It's a question that's fascinated philosophers and spiritual seekers for ages.
Well, get ready to explore that because we're diving deep into the Bhagavad Gita,
That's right.
specifically chapter 13,
Yeah.
to explore this idea of the field and the knower of the field.
We're going beyond just the surface of, our everyday lives to try to uncover a deeper understanding of who we really are.
So we're not talking about like literal fields here, right?
Not quite. Although the imagery is powerful. Imagine it this way. You're at a concert you've been really looking forward to. The music's blaring, the lights are flashing. You feel that excited anticipation in the air.
Yeah.
Even your own opinion about the band. That entire experience, all of that is part of the field.
Wow, okay, so it's more like our whole sensory and mental experience kind of rolled into one.
You got it. And the Gita gets really specific about this, actually listing 24 things that make up this field.
Hmm.
From the really tangible stuff we can touch to our thoughts, our ego, all of it.
24 things. Okay, I'm starting to see why this is a deep dive.
It's a deep tradition.
So if all that we experience is the field, then who's doing the experiencing? Who's the knower of the field?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And the Gita points to the Atman,
Okay.
often described as pure consciousness,
Right.
as the knower. Think of it like this. You're aware of the thoughts in your head, but you're not the thoughts themselves.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's like we're the audience watching a movie. We're aware of the emotions that the film is evoking, but we know that they're not us, you know?
Exactly. And here's where things get really fascinating. The Gita suggests that this knower, this pure consciousness, isn't just individual to us. It's actually the supreme self, what's called the Brahman, present in everything.
Okay, now my mind is officially a little blown. So you're saying that deep down, beneath all the stuff that makes up the field, there's this fundamental connection between everyone and everything.
That's exactly what the Gita is getting at. It challenges us to expand our understanding of the self beyond just our own individual experience and recognize this deeper, more universal connection.
Okay, that's huge. It's like we're all these individual expressions of the same like underlying energy or consciousness.
It's a pretty radical concept and one that has some really profound implications for how we see ourselves, how we see the world around us. But before we jump into that too deeply, let's maybe break down what it even means to understand this knower of the field in the first place.
Oh, I'm ready for this. So the Gita actually gives us a sort of checklist for this.
It does. It outlines 22 qualities that someone who's starting to grasp this concept might embody. And trust me, these aren't, your average self-improvement buzzwords. We're talking about some deep inner qualities like humility, self-control, forgiveness.
Well, those all sound like excellent qualities to cultivate, whether you're, trying to understand the universe or just be a good person, really.
It's a blueprint for living.
So it's about embodying these qualities and recognizing that our true self is more than just these experiences that we're having.
Precisely. And this is where the rubber really meets the road, right? Where this ancient wisdom goes from being interesting concepts to a practical guide for living a more fulfilling, more meaningful life.
No, that's what I'm talking about. I'm ready to explore how understanding all this can make a real difference in our day-to-day lives. But before we do that, let's take a quick break. All right, so we're back and ready to really dive into this practical side of this whole field of knower thing. Because let's face it, understanding ancient philosophy it's cool and all,
Right.
but how does it actually help us, navigate the real world with all its stress and craziness and everything?
Well, that's really the question, isn't it? And the Gita, doesn't shy away from this at all. Remember those 22 qualities we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Those are like signposts, right?
Mm.
Pointing us toward a life that's lived in greater alignment with a knower, with that true self.
Okay, so less about becoming an expert in ancient texts and more about actually embodying this wisdom in our daily lives. I like it. But 22 qualities, I mean, that's quite a list. Where do we even begin?
Well, let's take forgiveness as an example.
Okay.
The Gita isn't suggesting that we just let people off the hook for bad behavior, but rather that we begin to recognize how holding on to anger or resentment, those are all part of that ever-changing field.
Right.
They don't define the knower, the true self.
So forgiveness is a way to kind of free ourselves from carrying around all that negativity.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're choosing inner peace over being right.
Exactly. And that's just one example. The Gita emphasizes qualities like humility, which isn't about thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less often.
Right.
It's about shifting our focus from those really ego-driven desires of the field to the quiet stillness of the knower.
That makes a lot of sense, because when we're so caught up in our own little dramas, our wants and our worries and all that, we kind of lose sight of that bigger picture.
It's easy to do.
It's like that saying, you can't see the forest for the trees, right?
Precisely. Cultivating these 22 qualities helps us step back, see the whole forest, connect with that much deeper sense of self that the Gita says is our true nature. It's a process of refinement, letting go of what weighs us down, and embracing this more expansive way of being.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to really see how this all ties together. Yeah.
But there's one thing I'm still kind of grappling with here. If we're all expressions of this one supreme self, does that mean that our individual identities, like our unique personalities and everything, are those just an illusion? Well, that's a question that's puzzled philosophers and spiritual seekers for centuries.
Right.
But think of it this way. Imagine a vast ocean.
Okay.
Now picture the waves on the surface of that ocean. Each wave, it's unique, right? Different shape, different size, even a different sound.
Right, yeah.
But they're all ultimately just expressions of that same ocean.
So our individuality is like the wave,
Yeah.
and the Supreme Self is like the ocean. We're distinct, but still a part of something much, much larger than ourselves.
Beautifully put. And just like a wave can't exist without the ocean, the Gita suggests that our individual selves are really inextricably linked to that universal consciousness. It's not about erasing our individuality, but about understanding it within this larger, more interconnected context.
I love that analogy. It makes this whole concept feel, less abstract and more like something I can actually, wrap my head around.
Right.
So it's not about like denying our individual experiences, but recognizing their connection to something much greater than ourselves.
That's the beauty of the Gita's teachings, right? It doesn't ask us to reject the world or our experiences in the world, but rather to see them through a new lens, a lens of interconnectedness and ultimately of unity.
This is all incredibly profound, but I'll admit it's also a lot to digest,
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
For our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed right now, what's one key takeaway that you hope they walk away with from all of this?
If I had to choose just one, it would be this. The next time that you are feeling stressed or anxious or just caught up in the drama of life, just remember the field and the knower.
Okay.
Remember that you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you are not even your circumstances.
Right.
You are the awareness behind it all, the silent observer. And connecting with that awareness, even if it's just for a few moments, can create such a sense of peace and freedom that no external circumstance can take away from you.
That is such a powerful reminder and a perfect place to pause, I think. Now, I know we've been, throwing around some pretty profound concepts here.
We've been going deep.
And we're about to take this deep dive to a whole new level, because in the next part of our conversation, we're going to explore a passage from the Gita that you found that really beautifully illustrates this whole nature of the field and the knower.
It's a powerful image.
So don't touch that dial, because you won't want to miss this. All right, so we're back, and I am ready to dig into this passage that you mentioned. You said it really kind of brings this whole idea of the field and knower to life.
It really does. In chapter 13, verse 34, it says, and I'm paraphrasing slightly here, just as the one sun illuminates this whole world, so also does the Lord of the field illuminate the entire field, O Bharata.
The Lord of the field being the knower, our true self.
Exactly. And just like the sun kind of bathes everything in its light, the Gita suggests that our true self illuminates all of our experiences, whether we're aware of it or not.
I like that. It makes this whole concept feel, less abstract somehow, more relatable, we can all connect with. Like the feeling of sunlight, that life-giving warmth.
Absolutely. And just as the sun's light shines on absolutely everything without judgment, without being tainted by what it touches, so too does the self.
Okay.
It doesn't kind of label our thoughts as good or bad. It simply illuminates them.
Right.
It's pure awareness.
Okay, that's making a lot of sense. But it also kind of brings up a question for me.
Yeah.
If the self, if this Lord of the field is all-knowing and pure, why do we experience so much confusion and suffering in our lives? Like, why aren't we all just walking around in this state of like Blissful enlightenment 24/7.
Ah, the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the Gita actually addresses this head on. It all comes down to a simple yet really profound idea, and that's ignorance.
Yes.
We forget our true nature. We get so caught up in the field, in that ever-changing world of thoughts and emotions and sensations, that we mistake them for who we really are at the deepest level.
It's like we've forgotten that we're the audience, so to speak. We're
Yeah.
we're so engrossed in the movie of our lives, the ups and downs, all the drama of it all,
Right.
that we completely forget that it's just a projection on a screen.
What a perfect analogy.
Mhm.
And the more we identify with
Yeah.
the characters and the storylines in that movie, the more we suffer. But here's the good news. The moment we remember that we're the ones holding the remote,
Right.
the ones with the power to choose our perspective, we step into a whole new level of freedom.
So it's not about like trying to silence our thoughts or deny our emotions altogether, but it's about changing our relationship to them.
Exactly.
About recognizing that they're part of the show, but they're not the whole story.
Exactly. And that's where the practices that the Gita outlines, things like meditation, self-reflection, cultivating those 22 qualities we talked about,
Right.
they're not just these kind of abstract ideas. They're actually really practical tools to help us detach from the drama of the field and reconnect with that peace and stability of the knower within each of us.
Yeah, it's like we're slowly peeling back all these layers of conditioning and rediscovering our true essence, that place of peace and awareness that's always been there all along.
Beautifully put. And as we do that, as we connect more and more deeply with our own true nature, we naturally start to see that same essence reflected in everyone and everything around us.
Yeah.
The boundaries that we once perceived start to kind of dissolve. And we begin to experience this really profound sense of interconnectedness.
Wow. So this deep dive into the Bhagavad Gita, it's taken us from, the nature of reality to this idea of the interconnectedness of all things to even the path of personal liberation. I mean, it's quite a journey.
It really is. And like any good journey, it's not so much about reaching some kind of final destination, but about really embracing this process of discovery and growth along the way.
I couldn't agree more. And for our listeners, I think this conversation has offered just a ton to reflect on. So as we wrap up, I have one final question for you, and really for everyone who's been listening along with us. If, as the Gita suggests, the same supreme self resides in all beings, how might that awareness change the way we interact with the world around us, the way that we interact with each other? It's a question worth pondering, and one that I believe holds the key to unlocking a more compassionate, more connected, and ultimately a more fulfilling human experience. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.